Good morning, everyone. Come in. Come into this place that we make holy by our presence. Come in with your vulnerabilities and your strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here, you need not hide or pretend to be anything other than who you are and what you are called to be. Come into this place where you can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, compassion is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. As is our custom, if you'd like to come and light a candle for a joy or for a concern or just to bring more light into the world, please do so while we sit in stillness listening to the prelude.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, with all of our voices and reach out to me. With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Please stand in body or spirit for our chalice lighting and spoken affirmation. The words for lighting the chalice this morning are adapted from the Reverend Sarah Moores Campbell. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gift they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Join me together as we remind ourselves of the affirmation that is a cornerstone of our free faith tradition. The words, should you need them, are in the morning program and on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. Alcohol use disorder, aka alcoholism, alcohol dependence, alcohol addiction. A chronic, lifelong disease characterized by uncontrolled drinking and preoccupation with alcohol. Alcoholism is the inability to control drinking due to both a physical and emotional dependence on alcohol. Very common, more than 3 million U.S. cases per year. Continuing treatment can help put active disease into remission, but this condition cannot be cured. Usually self-diagnosable, can affect anyone at any age. Those with alcohol use disorder may have problems controlling their drinking, continue to use alcohol even when it causes problems, or have withdrawal symptoms when they rapidly decrease or stop drinking. Alcohol use disorder is a medical condition characterized by an unimpaired ability to stop or control alcohol use despite adverse social, occupational, or health consequences. Children born to mothers who drank excessively during pregnancy can be born premature and suffer from fetal alcohol syndrome. Our opening thought this morning is reading number 704 from Singing the Living Tradition by John Murray. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God or higher power. Our first reading is from the Hazelden Betty Ford Center. Thought for the day, August 23rd, 2023. We who have accepted the AA principles have been faced with the necessity for a thorough personal house cleaning. We must face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. We therefore take a personal inventory. We take stock honestly. We search out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. Resentment is the number one offender. A life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. If we are to live, we must be free of anger. We must ask ourselves, am I free of resentment and anger? For our practices today, a brief poem by the Reverend Penny Hackett Evans. Each of us brings a separate truth here. We bring the truth of our own life, our own story. We don't come as empty vessels, but as full people, each with our own story and our own truth. We seek to add to our truths and add to our stories. This room is rich with truth, rich with experience. All manners of people are here. Needy, joyful, frightened, anxious, bored. We all bring our truth with us. May we all recognize the truth and the stories in other lives than our own. May we hear and honor the truths that we all bring as we gather together. Together, we have truths. Together, we have a story. Together, we are a community. Let us sit quietly for a time.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Our second reading this morning comes from the UUA pamphlet, Addiction and Your Faith Community. There is hope. If you're reading this pamphlet, you are probably considering the first step of a long journey. Although it can be a scary time, it may also be the beginning of an amazing experience. We know. We've been there. When we decided we had to quit drinking, it was hard to imagine a life without the false comfort of alcohol. With each step we took along the way, we found strength we didn't know we had. Real friendships of support, clarity, and purpose we didn't imagine possible, and a deep satisfaction with life that came from fully engaging with recovery. You or your loved one can too. Take the first step. Ask for help. Call your minister or the minister of your local UU church. You can find a congregation near you by visiting uua.org/directory/congregations. Reach out to find a program. Welcome to the journey of a lifetime.
Sing out praises for the journey, pilgrims we who carry on. Searches in the soul's deep yearning, like a boulders in the time. We seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Love inside your soul, the kindling of the heart for pilgrims new. Find the Spirit always restless, find it in each mind and heart. Touch and hold that ancient yearning, kindling for a new-found truth. Still now on the threshold, gazing futures yet unknown. The feet behind us, wayside household, built by those who knew our roads. Oh, we hear the secret embers buried in our minds and hearts.
Hey y'all, I'm Sherilyn and I'm an alcoholic. I cannot give you a date as to when my first drink was because it was put in my baby bottle to keep me quiet. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My mother did not want me. She had another child just because she had another husband. She had at least 4 that we know of. I went through all sorts of abuse of all kinds. My mother was a vicious woman. When somebody doesn't want you around, you learn real young how to hide. I tried desperately to stay invisible through most of my childhood because I didn't want her to see me. Because if she saw me, something bad was going to happen. And this continued on for years and years. When I was, as a child, my mother and father fought a lot. And she would get me out of bed to come and take her side in the middle of the night while they were fighting. All I wanted was to go back to bed and, get under the covers.
My childhood was rough. Not as rough as some people, but it was rough. The people I thought I could trust, I couldn't. I knew a long, long time ago not to ever put anything in writing, not around my mother. Because she found anything, she read it, no matter whose it was. And if you had something in there that she didn't like, you knew about it. My drinking started for real, for me, when I was about 15. I started hitting the bars. I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. So there's lots of those. And there's a lot of those that don't care about carding anybody. Of course, I wore tons of makeup. And back then, of course, you had the ratted up hair. As I'm talking old times. So I could get anywhere. People didn't card me. And I had a best friend that was 5 years older than me. And she was also a heavy drinker. Her whole family was. When my mother would get on to me, I knew I could go next door. And I knew the lady, my friend's mother, would greet me at the door with a screwdriver. That's how I got my orange juice, with a little vodka in it. And she would pamper me. And then soon my mother would come over and pretend nothing ever happened. This best friend and I mean, she could go anywhere. And so I followed her. I went anywhere too. Some places I should never have been. And by this time, I was drinking every day. Every day. It let me be somebody else, like the song said. It let me be someone else that fit in, someone else that could be whoever you wanted me to be. And that's what I did. Whoever you wanted me to be, that was me. That was what, just my whole life then was to be somebody else. And stay away from my mother. She was one of those that I never knew what it was going to be like when I got up in the morning, when I came home from school. She was, I don't know, back then they had room mothers at school that took care of parties and stuff like that, and baked things and all for parties. Well, my mother was a wonderful room mother. Everybody thought she was fantastic. I knew better. I knew what was going to happen. If I didn't act right during these parties, I was going to get it. And her definition of acting right changed a lot, all the time. I had a very painful life, and I wanted to be so bad, wanted to be somebody else. When I don't know, at 15, 16, 17, I was, the bars were where I went. That's what I did. I never had to sneak out, but I had to sneak back in. One night, I was at the bar that we went to a lot, and my dad walked in. I was 16. I was sitting at the bar with a guy that was 30. And he was holding my hand when my dad walked in. And I told him, I said, you better move. And he said, my dad just walked in. And he turned around. My dad was 6'4" and a big man. This guy was not. He quickly moved. My dad sat down beside me. And he said, one more drink and we got to go. And he bought me a drink. The bartender at that bar, his name was Lucky. He had 13 kids. I'm not sure he was lucky. But he babied me. He watched me. He watched over me. He made sure I was okay in his bar. At his bar, I was safe. And when my daddy walked in, Lucky came over because he wanted to make sure who this man was. And I introduced him. And he like, okay. And so Daddy bought me a drink. We came home, and my mother met me at the door with her fist. My daddy grabbed her hand and said, no, I ain't having none of that. My daddy was my rock. Both my parents were alcoholics. Both of them could not make it without a drink. And there was booze in the house. Well, I can remember at 5 years old, there was a cup on the counter, and I came in from playing outside, and this was clear, right? And I grabbed that cup and took a great big old swig. It was gin. It was not water. I was like, and spit it out the window. When I was little, my parents would have parties of all kinds. And what I did at these parties, I was the cute little girl. And what I did at these parties, I had Shirley Temple ringlets. And, I was the cute little girl. I was on show. I had to perform things, sing songs and do stuff. But my thing was to go around to people and take sips. A sip of your drink? Sure. Sure, you can have a drink. And I did that a lot till I had sips of everybody's drinks, a lot. So I was a drunk little girl. And even then, it was something that saved me from being there. I could get my mother's approval if I did these, little shows and things. I was physically abused, verbally abused, mentally abused, and sexually abused by my mother and by a man that she would bring in when my daddy wasn't there. He was a truck driver at the time, and when he was gone, she would bring in this guy. I would be locked in it was a pump house, and it was just a little bit bigger than this podium. It was made out of tye-dyed brick, and you had to move the roof to get into it. That's where they would put me while they were busy. It has taken me a long time, years and years, to get used to whistling or to tolerate it, because this guy whistled as he took me down to the woods and put me in this thing. He whistled, and that was something that for a long time I could not stand a whistle. It just made me physically ill. Nowadays I can handle it, but it took me years. Nowadays with my life now, I can handle most things, not all. I went through some boyfriends that I should never have had, twice my age, Vegas musicians, and I had a thing for guitar players. Well, I managed to stay out of trouble. I had people watching over me, but if I had a boyfriend at this one club we used to go to, and he was a guitar player, of course, and there was this woman flirting with him. And at this point, I was not in love with this man, but she was flirting with him, and that pissed me off. Of course, I was drunk, and she went to the bathroom. I followed her, locked the door, and put her face through the mirror and told her she better leave him alone. That was my anger. And I carried a lot of anger. I could not express it at home. Oh my gosh, I could not express anything at home. Especially anger. Ladies were not ever supposed to get angry. And I was supposed to be a lady. I wasn't. Still aren't. I'm still not. I'm just me. By the time I was I know that I was an alcoholic by the time I was 18 for sure. And at 18, I met my now ex-husband. I was 19 when we got married. A year later, I was pregnant and had her. Proud of my daughter. I was still drinking heavy. I mean, I had 3 kids, and I had to reach a certain point of drunk before I could stand and cope with all of them coming in from school and him coming in from work all at the same time. Because I could not cope with it. It was too much. So I had to be drunk. And when I go back a little bit, when my mother died, well, she had a stroke, a severe stroke. They lived in Las Vegas, and I lived in Oklahoma. My youngest son, who was 4 at the time, we flew out there and to help take care of her. They had sent her home. My mother's 5'2" and weighed 300 pounds, close to 400 pounds. And they sent her home. She had 1 kidney and she still had a catheter in. My sister, who was trying to take care of her, who's always had eating problems, she weighed 75 pounds. She was my older sister. She was born premature and she was very tiny. Actually, my sister and brother and I all had different fathers. And this was all within 5 years. She was trying to take care of Mom, and Mom she couldn't speak very well, of course, but she was still vicious. And I got her, I told Dad that she had to go back in the hospital. And we got her into another hospital. I called an ambulance, had to pick her up. Made her mad. But she had blood poisoning going down her arm. And I could just see it going up the veins. I knew that she had to go in. I couldn't get drunk enough to cope with this. I could not. I mean, I drank and drank and drank. But I couldn't get drunk enough. My son came to me after he got up one morning and said he had a lump that hurt. And he had a big egg-sized lump in his groin. And, I mean, fear just shot all over me. At this time, I was still drinking. And we got him home. And they, through a lot of tests and a lot of agony, they finally diagnosed him with cancer. He grew 3 more lumps. He had 2 more surgeries. He had 3 surgeries by the time he was 5. He was in the hospital on his 5th birthday. And the nurses just boiled him rotten. He had cake all day long. They made a big banner. I mean, this kid was just boiled rotten. He liked that. Still does. We went through several months of chemotherapy with this baby. And I drank. I sat up at night, held that baby thrown up, and I drank. By this time, I was drinking beer a lot. I didn't used to drink beer at all, but it got to where beer was easy. I didn't have to mix it. I could send my kids to go and get me one out of the refrigerator. They were great servants. And, I didn't have to do much. I said, put it in the fridge. So, beer was easy. Whether I liked the taste much at all, it's kind of an acquired thing to me. But my life, I was totally wrapped up in my kids. She was spouting anger all over the place because she was an angry child. My middle son was, I think that he didn't ever really seem to bond well. And I don't know why. Because he was my baby. Shanna was the first grandchild on both sides. She was the first granddaughter. Her dad's the oldest of 4 boys. So, she was the precious one. She was spoiled rotten. Her grandma made her all kinds of clothes and dresses. Some of them beautiful. So,
I wouldn't know not to choose.
they weren't. I never had to worry about clothes for her because Grandma loved making girl clothes. Only for years she'd made boy clothes. But now she had to make girl clothes. Oh, she was happy with that. We'd go to their house on Sundays to eat dinner and do laundry and visit. And I had to not drink until I got home. And I got to the point where I was so glad to get home. I enjoyed these people. I loved my in-laws dearly. Absolutely dearly. I still miss them. We always used to joke that if we split up, he'd go home to my mom and I'd go home to his. Because it was wonderful. I was the girl. I was the first girl. Because he was the first one to get married. And I was the first girl. So I was spoiled too. They never knew at the time how much I was drinking. Nobody did. Except Stuart some. Because he had to buy it. I had made it to where I could get to the store, buy my beer, and get home in time to start drinking it before they got home. Now I'm a Pepsi-aholic. It took over my life. I could not do anything. I went to a meeting at the preacher's house and took my beer. This was a youth meeting, and I took my beer. He was not happy about that. Fortunately, he was a good friend, but he was not happy about that. That's one of the things that first brought it to me, how much my drinking meant to me. I love tequila. That was one of my favorite drinks. I loved a margarita. I passed out in a bar bathroom on the floor, drinking margaritas. They were my weakness. And tequila sunrises, I like my tequila. And my kids remember me making tequila sunrises every day. Because that's what I had every day. She could tell you how pretty they were. I was quite proud of how pretty they were. It's strange the things you can be proud of. When we got married, it was, my parents were 2,000 miles away. She had to sign the papers because I was just 19, but she still talked about how I ran away and got married. But she loved him. She absolutely adored Stuart. She called him Steve, but she adored Stuart. We went out to Vegas to visit them, and Shanna came to me and asked me, why does Grandma have beer in her clothes basket? And I had to explain because Grandma had to hide her beer. My brother would come and take their booties for himself. My dad had some bad scotch, some not so good scotch, that he'd let my brother drink. And he kept his good scotch hidden. My brother was an addict of alcoholic and gambling. And pretty much that's what's killed him. So it's not just me. It was a family thing. It was, something that we enjoyed as a family, and we suffered as a family. I never ever. The only thing, my mother actually decided I was a good person when I had grandkids, because that was the only thing that impressed her. I had kids, and I had the first one. So she was hard to please. Having to go through pregnancy was, we, when we got married, we hung around with a musical group called Bootleg Glory. In the South, that meant something. And this band went all over the counties there and played. They were quite popular. And he was their roadie. And we did a lot of drugs. I never got into heavy drugs. The drugs I did was a lot of marijuana, mescaline twice, and speed. I loved my speed. With my speed, I could stay up longer. I could drink longer. And that was important. It gave me more time to drink. But it also made me feel normal. When I had my speed, which I had what they called back then black RJS, and that was a trucker speed. It was very good. It didn't leave you crashing, so I loved it. Loved it. But like I say, it let me drink longer. It let me have what I wanted longer. And it helped me to be somebody else. I could be a social person. I could be whoever you wanted me to be. The group we ran around with was all about our age. He had known some of them for years. One of them was his best man when we got married. And his wife was my matron of honor. And I was a witness at her divorce. We shared a lot with these people. These people were a big part of our lives every day. So we were doing some drugs every day. He had different jobs during this time. Tupelo, Mississippi is where we lived at the time. And wasn't very big then. Back then it was a small town. When I had her, there was a program that helped us get a house. A brand new house. We chose the lot, we chose the plan, everything. The rent was $72 a month. He was making $78 a week. And so, and of course I didn't have to clothe her, but other things, yeah. But we made it through it. Because of course things didn't cost quite as much back then as now. But we partied, and we partied a lot. We had parties at our house, we had other people had parties at their house, and we partied a lot. And she went with us. She was always with us. We didn't go places without her. I didn't shove her off on the grandparents or anything. She was mine. It was my job to take care of her. And I took that very seriously. Not seriously enough to stop drinking. When I had my first boy, I wanted seriously to stop the drugs and everything. And I tried. It didn't work. I was so under the control of it then, I could not stop. I'd try for a few days and nope, couldn't take it. Weekend come along, nope. I had to do it. At that point, the family life was good. We had the kids, and we moved to Arkansas, and I had my third one in Arkansas. My boy, my last one, my boy, he's a boy. And he was, I don't know, we were looking for another house when we moved to Oklahoma. Out from Arkansas, we moved to Oklahoma because we were living with the in-laws. And then we lived in a little bitty town of Alpena when my son was born. He was born in Harrison. And the grandparents still never knew how much we drank. They knew when I was pregnant because I couldn't stand the smell of alcohol. And they'd open the wine bottle for the special dinners, and nope, I could not take it. I could not take the smell. I could not take alcohol when I was pregnant, which was a good thing. Now, what, I didn't do drugs when I was pregnant? It was just one of those things of, nope. And I felt real righteous for that. And there's nothing righteous in that. When we moved to Oklahoma from Arkansas, he ended up with a group of friends at work that all drank like us. And we had parties. We had a big, good-sized house, and we had a lot of parties. Well, we were going to look for another house, and my son, my youngest one, said, well, got to make sure there's a lot of space to park for all the parties we have. And I was like, okay, this says he's saying something. And that was another little light going on. The last house we lived there, the garage had been made into a bedroom. And oh, God, we were still drinking. And Stephen had gone through his cancer. He had come out cured. That's what they said, cured. He's going to be 43 in September. And he's got 3 boys. And he's a wonderful father. He was a single father for a long time, and he wonderful father. His boys have been his life for him. I'm not sure, why he did some drugs. He went through the drug thing. His drug thing didn't last very long, but then he became a pothead. So he had to have his pot. And he's not doing that anymore either, which I'm proud of him. But he had to have his crutch too. She went through hers, and she had to have her crutch. My middle son, I had to invite him to leave my house and move out because of his drugs. I found the crack, I found the pipe, I found the lighter stuff where he would burn it and smoke it. It was like, no. I had a son that was just, 10 years old at the time, and I wasn't going to risk losing him for this other one's drug use. So I told him he had to leave. He had his crutch too. We had pretty much taught them to have a crutch, because that's what we did. I say we because we both did it then. We both raised these kids. I'm proud of all of them. Yeah. One of them divorced the family several years ago, and he doesn't have anything to do with any of us. His choice. And that's fine. That's his. I don't have to live with that, live in that. I don't have to hate him. He's my son. I will always love him. That's when, I'm jumping all over the place. When we moved to Oklahoma, we had these parties with all of the group. Oh, drunk. I got so drunk at these parties. I passed out a couple of times, which is not pleasant to wake up in someplace else. But we had to have parking for all of our parties. This house that we lived in, the last house, had the garage had been made into a big bedroom, and my 2 sons were out there in bunk beds. Well, I drank a lot of beer at the time, and I bought it in the cases. And I'd go through about a case a day. Yeah, I was drinking a lot. And I looked out from the kitchen into their room one day, and all over that room, there were these beer cartons. My son had made garages, houses, 3-story buildings, and things out of these beer boxes. And I'm like, ooh. I mean, they were all over the bedroom. I'm like, oh, that did not look good at all. And it scared me really bad. Really bad. I had a friend that went to treatment for her drug addiction. And I personally thought this woman had it all together. I mean, she was an EMT and you know, she just, no, she didn't. She didn't. So, when she went to treatment, it was like, I need to do that. So I made calls. And my doctors didn't know how much I drank. It was a surprise to them. One doctor said, well, no wonder those B vitamin shots aren't working. They didn't work. So when I decided I wanted to go into treatment, I made calls. I didn't know anything about treatment. I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know anything. I just knew that I had a problem. I was asking for help. And fortunately, these people understood this. And I told them that I could not come in until the next week. And they wanted me to come in that day, and I said, I can't. Well, that day was a Sunday. The next day was a Sunday, and I drank my last beer. I had one beer left, and I drank it. And that was my last drink, 35 years ago. And I don't miss it today. I went into treatment, did all the things they told me to do, went to all the meetings. The first time I said, I'm Sherilyn, I'm an alcoholic, was such a relief because I knew what was wrong with my life. I finally found out what was wrong and what I was doing wrong for my life. Went to all these meetings, did all of this therapy, which I won't ever do that again, and had some really tough counselors and some really soft counselors. So I went through all of the care, the stuff I was supposed to do there, and I got sober. I never had DTs, which was amazing. That was a God deal. I became one of the people that they called on to help the other people, which really surprised me because, I was 33 at the time, and I think it was 33, somewhere around there. I went in, and there's 2 old ladies. I say old ladies because these ladies were, at that time, my age now. And everybody cussed. Everybody cussed a blue streak. And these 2 ladies never really cussed. Well, they got to where they would say goodnight, MF, and whatever. It was like cussing each other. And it was funny to watch these ladies. But they had some freedom, which I'd never really seen. People be free with themselves. That was not part of my life. And I could be free. I could be free to be me. And these people liked me. And that was a surprise. It took a long time for me to like me. Because I spent years not liking me. That was one of the things my mother made sure of, letting me know how horrible I was. And all the names, she, like I said, was vicious. But I went into treatment. Go back a little bit. Just before that, my mom died. When I went out to Vegas, when she died. And I couldn't get drunk enough. I drank and drank. We went to the bar. I drank and drank and drank. Even those tequilas, I drank. Could not get drunk. I'd reached the point where I couldn't get drunk. They were doing drugs, my friends were, but I was not into that. Could not get into meth or any of that. That was just, I really prided myself on not doing those things. I was better, you know. Maybe not. When I got back, that's when I got back to Oklahoma, and all these things happened to spur me on to getting sober. They taught me about AA and treatment. We went to AA meetings. They took us out at night to go to AA meetings. And this was with total strangers. And these strangers saved my life. They taught me how to live and that I could live without alcohol, which was really a strange concept for me because I didn't think it was possible for me to do that. I didn't think it was possible for me to get sober. The people in AA, I mean, like I said, this was in Tulsa, and these were total strangers, and they were all so good to me. One man bought me my first big book because I couldn't afford it. Another lady bought my first 12 and 12 steps, because I couldn't afford it. These people taught me how to do the 12 steps. They taught me that it was okay for me to have a higher power of my understanding, not of anybody else's, but of my understanding. I didn't have to have everybody else's God. I didn't have to have everybody else's higher power telling me what to do. Just mine to help me and guide me. Sometimes I get ragingly mad at him, and I let him know. And he pats me on the head and says, "It'll be all right." Just like a good father would do. And that's my thing with God. Nobody else has to have my God. Sorry. Nobody else has to have my God. I've never forced it on anybody. Learning the steps and learning how to be honest. That was not fun. I didn't want to be honest. I mean, if I was honest, you weren't going to like me. You know, you were going to think I was horrible and nasty. If I was honest. If I was the person that I really was, it was going to be bad things for me. So getting honest was difficult. And then the fourth step, you have to be honest. And you have to learn how to forgive. And it took a while to learn that forgiving was not for them, it was for me. I have to forgive for me. It's not going to help them none. They don't care, whoever they are. They don't care. But I do. Today, I don't hold very many resentments at all. Maybe the place where I live, but there's reasons for that too. But I don't hold a lot of resentments for people. It's just, at my age, it's just too damn much work to hang on to all that stuff, you know. And I've learned that I don't need it. I don't need that baggage. I carried it for a long time, most of my life, and I don't need it anymore. I am just me. People either like me or they don't. That's not my concern. It's none of my business whether somebody likes me or not. Absolutely none of my business. It's their thing. I'm not going to try to be somebody else to make them like me. I did that for a long time. I got real good at it. today in my life, I have wonderful people like y'all, because you are a big part of my life. My ex-husband and I are very good friends. My daughter and I managed to live together and not kill each other. Yeah, well, it's come close for both of us, but yeah. My youngest son loves me dearly. My middle son, he is now having good contact with his girls. He's got 2 daughters. And for years, he didn't have any contact with them either. So he didn't raise those girls. They raised themselves with a very sick mother. She's a whole nother story. But I found out that the things I did through my son's cancer were things I had to do for me and to help him, because if I hadn't, I could not have helped my baby. Some terrible things happened. Babies died, little kids died when he was getting treatment. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. Knowing these kids for months and months, and then they're gone. And they're not even 5, and they're gone. That was still something we got to talk about. It was very hard. I never, ever thought I'd have to deal with something like that. Unfortunately, he had Hodgkin's disease. And fortunately, it's curable. At the time, though, he was one of the youngest in the world. There were 15 kids in the world under teenage years because it is a pubescent onset disease. He was one of 15 in the world at that time under teenage to have it. Slides of his lumps went all over the world. I told him he became famous. Pictures of him went everywhere. He coped with the surgeries. He coped with everything so wonderfully. He had spinal taps and didn't cry. He got to where after when they poked him a few times and couldn't find a good vein anymore, he'd tell them which vein to go to, and it would work. And they got to where they said, okay, which one? You know, he was 5, but he knew. He knew what was going on. We never kept secrets from him. We never played it down. We never played it up. It's just, this is what it is, and this is what we got to do. Yeah, I was freaking miserable. My baby was very, very sick. Getting through that, I think, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I couldn't do it sober. I had to do it drunk. And I know today that it was God saving me and him. Because I don't think I could have been there and done the things I'd done that I had to do sober at that time. I had to do them drunk. There's several times that I can look back at my drinking and know that God saved me. There was somebody stepping in. Man, my guardian angel has worked overtime. And I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful to be alive. I'm very grateful that most of my health is okay. I have to have another surgery on my other shoulder, so I'll do it. I'll deal with what I got to deal with. And that's just my thing today. I'll deal with what I got to deal with. I despise where I'm living. I absolutely hate it. I hate apartment living. I hate apartment living. But I'm doing it. Sometimes not real gracefully, but I'm doing it. I've let God know about this. I have conversations with my higher power, and he has them with me, and he saves me, saves my life. Today, I can look around and see that people like me. and like to be around me. And I'm so grateful for that. There are many, many things in my life that I am grateful for. I'm grateful I got a roof over my head, even though I don't like it. Even though it's extremely noisy because those guys up there are strong. So, yeah, but I do have a roof over my head. And I was going to lose those. We were going to lose those. We were heading down. We were heading downhill. Getting sober was imperative, or we were going to die. And I was going to die bad. I was going to die miserable like my mother. And I didn't want to do that. Did not want to be in that state any longer. Today, I'm very grateful for my life I have. I'm very grateful that I have one. I try to have some gratitude every day because it's what keeps me going. And I have not had a drink for 35 years. And that's a God deal. Thank you. Thank you. It's with my God and with my people. Even people that aren't drunks, they keep me sober. Her driving keeps me in touch with my higher power a lot.
You ain't dead yet.
I have a higher power. So it's part of my life. It is my life. Staying sober is my life. I don't go to a lot of AA meetings anymore. Group we were going to at the time got real sick. The group got sick with some sick people. And some people were going to beat up and kill other people and things like that. And I decided I didn't need that. And I've always stayed in contact with drunks. My best friend was a drunk, so, in the program. So we stayed together for a long, long time. Her health problems and my health problems have kept us apart. But I still have drunks in my life. And I hope I always will. Thank y'all for listening. I really appreciate you. God bless y'all.
Thank you, Mom. I have notes. I'm sure Dad does too. The Reverend Brandy Lovely offers these words to inspire and remind us of the importance of supporting the church. He writes, "Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. The bowl awaits, or you may donate through our website."
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I To you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
I want to invite you to stand in body or spirit for the benediction and extinguishing the chalice. The Reverend Forest Church, for whom our library was named when we moved into this building, reminds us life is not a given, but a wondrous gift. That gift comes with no price attached. One day something will steal it from us. This doesn't diminish our lives. It increases their value. Fragility and impermanence ensures life's preciousness. Please join me in saying the words to extinguish our chalice. The words are in the morning program and on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please sit for the postlude, which our speaker specifically asked that we include Janis Joplin's song, Me and Bobby McGee.